That's Dolly Valentine, Caught in the In-Between, which, not coincidentally, is the name of her new album. We found Dolly in London, a long way from Cape Cod, where she was when we last spoke. These days, Dolly is something of a traveling troubadour.
Since I talked to you, the main places I've lived are Ireland, Scotland, and Italy.
Nice.
Because Italy's been a longer process, so that's going to be the main place that when I go back, I'll stay there. I'll get my permesso di soggiorno, which is my long-term permission to stay.
Nice.
Yeah. So
why choose that place to move to?
It's a long story, but it's basically a process of getting dual citizenship. So seemed, and I've always wanted to. I've always wanted to live abroad, and I think after 2020 and everything, I just seized the opportunity, and I knew I wanted to do another album, and I connected with Jamie Smith, who owns the church studio where I recorded it.
Right.
And I ended up hanging out there, and I lived on a island called Lismore.
Yeah.
Which has a population of 140 people, which was very interesting. So I was there for about a month and a half at the beginning of the summer.
We have an island called Stewart Island, way at the bottom of New Zealand, underneath the South Island. I think it has a population of about 60-some people. And my daughter goes there. She has a friend there.
The whole culture.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty cool. Yeah. So
are we doing concerts again? Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're back in business, so that's nice. Awesome. We got through everything as much as we could. It feels like you went through some kind of transformation. Was that COVID related, or was it life related, or what brought all this on for you?
I think it was a little bit of everything, and just the timing of my life that the right impulse struck me to move forward in a new way. And something that I'd always wanted to do, but then I found that I had the window of opportunity to do it. So I think when you live in a new place, it just totally transforms the way you see the world. And I'm finding that whole experience very exciting. And it's also a little lonely though, because it's like developing a whole new part of your brain that you didn't know you had there, and developing ways of communicating. And so it's been an interesting dichotomy of things, but it has been a transformation for sure.
Yeah, I noticed being a expat American myself who moved away, it changed how I viewed the States from outside rather than being inside quite dramatically. Just seeing
very dramatically.
Yeah, and I imagine that's even more profound now, because I did that in like 1994. Here in 2023, it's a very different scenario. How did it affect you?
Yeah, there's almost something about for me at least, being in Scotland, that it felt much more like home than the States ever did. It's a hard feeling to put a finger on, but it's almost like something in my bones just recognized that place. And I mean, it is a lot of where my ancestry comes from. So, but there's just a heritage and a feeling that that was really great, and that I think played a part in the music, although I didn't necessarily intend it to. But all the musicians were Scottish except for Kimo, who was on the last album, and we recorded from Seattle and sent it in.
Yeah.
So he kind of added that Americana blend.
Yep. I believe Americana Fest is happening right now in Nashville. So
oh, really?
But I mean, let's face it, all that Americana music and folk music and Appalachian music, it all has its roots in Scotland and Ireland and all those places anyway.
Exactly.
So it's all one thing.
Which it really, I had a whole mini education on that. And the sheer talent of the musicians up there just completely blew my mind, because they can be in a room together and just do the deedle-dee, hum a song, and then everybody starts playing, and they're also I'm not that kind of musician,
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm not a musician of any kind, so I'm just flabbergasted anytime I see that happening in front of me. It's amazing. So tell me about the St. Mary's Space. That's the name of the church, right, that you recorded at?
Yes, so Jamie, who's the producer, and he's a musician, and his wife, they bought that church and then made it into a space for music. And he does a lot of field recording projects. So doing like more traditional style rock album like mine was
Yep.
a unique project, I think. I mean, he does do that, but he does a lot of experimental stuff and more sound stuff and going out into the wilderness and recording things, and he layers things together. So it was kind of a unique project for them. And then for me, it was this completely, like, the space really indicated what the album ended up sounding like.
Right.
And just went in, and we didn't have any plan. It was a totally just off the cuff, and it worked out really well. It was in the middle of the winter.
Yeah.
It was in the middle of the winter, and we basically saw no sunlight for an entire month because
Right.
no windows really in the church, just like the stained glass.
Right.
So it helped to make us all go a little crazy and get into this vortex of music making.
Yep. So I read somewhere where everybody was playing together in real time when you were recording this, but then again, you mentioned that, there's something came in from Seattle or something. So explain further, please.
So I guess part one was me writing the songs, and I wrote all the songs on the album, and that's just like basic guitar and the lyrics.
Yep.
And then the next phase was bringing it into the studio, and that's where all the people, the Scottish musicians, and they all came in and together built up this layered sound.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened all spontaneously and live, which was very important to Jamie, the producer. He really likes that live, natural sound of the room. So there were no like separate rooms like there usually are in studios. Everything happened in the space. And then when that was all finished, I thought the album was done. But as I lived with it for a little while, and it was mixed by Ali Chant, who's in Bristol, and he brought a little bit more of like a modern edge to the sound, I think.
Right.
So as I was listening to it, I felt like I really missed that Americana level from my first album.
Right.
And so I called up Chemo, and then he added those final touches.
Cool.
So it happened in 3 parts, which is part of why it took so long.
Right.
But
right.
I really hemmed and hawed over this album. It just took me a very long time for some reason. I think because it paralleled my life.
Right.
Being so in motion, but also the sound. I couldn't quite wrap my head around the sound, and it took me some time to be able to understand what was happening there.
So do you feel like a different person from the person who made the previous record?
Probably. Yes and no.
All right.
There's the core central self there.
Right.
The self evolves.
All right.
And there's so much that I've seen and experienced, and people that I've met and places. And I think part of what was hard about finally releasing the album is it felt like the end of a chapter.
Uh-huh.
And now there's this big question mark of like, what next? So the album was very, very much this lived experience through my life.
Cool.
Yeah, so, it does feel very transformational. So.
And you worked, did something called analytic dream work that helped your songwriting, or inspired it, or explain. I'm doing a terrible job. So
no, so I've been studying for the past 3 years the work of Carl Jung, who was a yeah. And
we share a birthday, so I'm all young.
Oh, really?
Carl Jung and Mick Jagger.
That's awesome. I share birthday with John Lennon, so
there you go.
Have cool birthday people. But no, that's a really. If I had to have one of those fantasy dinner parties that people talk about, I would definitely invite Carl Jung for sure, and Freud probably, so they could kind of fight. But I started studying all that, and then I ended up doing this school with these Jungian analysts. That's like a dream interpretation school.
Yeah.
Through just like an online program, and it's been so fascinating to me. So I'm developing something out of that, which I haven't like really presented yet, but I used it a lot for the songwriting. So basically it's called dream incubating, where you sort of like dream incubate a concept or a song. And sometimes it would just happen naturally without needing to suggest it to my subconscious. But for example, the song Rest a While came entirely in a dream.
All of the rivers, all of the rain, fight for me, Michael, carry the blade out.
flow, the lyrics, the chord progression, and just the whole feeling and the visual. So like every song almost has an invisible visual within it. So I would say maybe like half of the songs have elements that were pulled from dreams that I had, which I think there's a lot of stories in the album. It's very meandering, and I think that's part of why.
It seems very something that has
Yeah,
some literary references. You mentioned Joan Didion and Ernest Hemingway, and Elvis Presley. He's one of the great writers of our time.
yeah, there's a lot of ghosts on the album. Like there's a lot of archetypal ghosts, James Dean,
right?
All like I played it with a lot of those subjects that do come up in dreams, and generally the core of Jungian dream work is that everything in the dream represents you somehow, and everything in the dream is constructive,
right?
No matter how absurd it might seem, which is kind of great, because then you become less afraid of some of the imagery that you see in your dreams, because sometimes, you know, once you get the ropes of it a little bit, it's not quite as intimidating, although it's very hard to interpret your own dreams. It's much easier to interpret others because we have a resistance to what our dreams are saying. Right.
So I'm wondering, have you developed a process of remembering the dreams? Because I find them very fleeting. It's like you have an impression, but details are sketchy at best.
I do have a process. I used to be like a purist about it has to be written down in my journal.
Right.
But now I do just get it into my notes on my phone, because otherwise it just will feel too daunting sometimes, especially if it's a very long dream. You have to basically train yourself to stay in that in-between space. And while you're like, you have to tell yourself not to move, because if you move positions, then sometimes it will leave. So you try to stay in the position you're in, and then you'll have a vague notion of the dream, and you try to stay there and then tell the dream to yourself in your head.
Right.
And that's the best way that I've found for it to stick. Once you've done that, then you can take it to your notes or your journal. But of course, it doesn't work every single time.
Right.
And they go through waves. Like there'll be times of really prolific, wonderful, very interesting dreams, and then times where it's just like total insanity of bits and pieces.
Have you ever got to the point where a dream has been so intense or so that you had to wake yourself up to kind of?
For sure.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah, I think those are common. I think people say that's kind of the subconscious, like waking you up to whatever that's saying. Like you really need to pay attention to this. I do have those. I've been by myself most of the summer. Like sometimes it depends who's around. It depends what's going on, but you know. Have you had those?
Okay, cool. Yes, I had one the other day. I had to wake myself. It was very intense.
So sometimes if you can isolate like what was the event that woke me up, then it might be your subconscious saying, hey, we want to look at this, you know. But
Yep.
You have to be kind of brave. You have to be brave.
I'm a chicken. So I'm interested in you made several videos. Most of them are kind of grainy, black and white, 8mm style.
Yeah.
What it is about? Why does that look work with your music, do you think?
I think I wanted something that felt totally different than the first album, which was so like red and yellow and very, I don't know, just sunshiny and happy.
Yep.
And I was feeling more of this stark black and white, like just something coming from another time, kind of ghosty. So it was just what I visually wanted. And then I luckily, because I had 8mm film, which was expired and had been through the, X-ray a million times and all that. So I was nervous that it wouldn't turn out, but it did enough. But it's, it's not hyper clear imagery, but I think it fits the feel of the album. And I'm very grateful that it worked out, because it was kind of a crapshoot.
Yep. So there's a video for Blueberry Room, which is the opening track on the record. So maybe you can tell me why it's the opening track, or about making the video, whatever you feel like.
Strawberry moon and skinny dipping in June in the falls for a babe. Knee high, 4th of July, but I would throw it all away.
Yeah, Blueberry Room was one of my favorite songs on the album, and I actually was going to put it at the very end of the album. Not the last song, but the song I was going to put it at number 12, I guess. It was going to be the second to last song on the album. But Charlie Gray, who's the fiddle player, one of the fiddle player on the album, and he's an incredible traditional musician from Scotland.
Right.
He did a track order, and he said like this should definitely be on the front of the album. And when I listened to it that way, it just made the album make a lot more sense, I guess, because I think that's a very personal song and kind of like goes back into the past, and I don't know, it sets up the darkness of the album, the kind of like somber, the hardship of the album in a way that. So anyway, but the video was just done spontaneously with 8mm, and some in Scotland and some in Italy. Right.
You edited it yourself, do you?
Yeah.
Is that something new, or have you always been dabbling?
No, I've always done that. I took a class at the Rhode Island School of Design.
Oh, okay.
You know RISD?
Is that where did like the Talking Heads come from there or something? One of them?
Probably. I think it's in Providence, Rhode Island, but it's a well-known art school.
Yeah.
But I did this. I just did this like one class there on film editing, because I was like, I'm gonna do music, and I'm gonna need to know how to edit stuff. So it's a good skill to have.
So the final track is called Great Mystery, which it seems to kind of address conspiracy theories, but not really, because it's more about just being open-minded, I think. But you tell me.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know about ghosts and UFOs, lost islands in the sea, what will or will not be, but I believe in the possibilities of all the depths of things we cannot see.
I think that song almost, to me, it's one that has a little essence of the first Dolly Valentine album.
Right.
Because there's this like call towards positivity and hope, and at the same time just kind of admitting that we all like really don't know at the end of the day. Life is a mystery, and so that one's kind of the sweet in the other, whatever the other vibe of the rest of the album is. And I think it was probably inspired a little bit by just like so many different opinions and voices and things that we're submerged in, and the way that everything is now, and that can be kind of exhausting. And I wanted to like make something that felt somehow like a positive, if that makes sense.
Yep.
But it's the most ballady, I guess, on the album.
Now, you mentioned there are ghosts within this record. One of them mentioned specifically is the ghost of Elvis, but lyrically it sounds very personal. It's like you're drawing from something that happened when you were a child.
My brother and I walk home from school. He plays his video games. I go into the living room, turn on the radio. There's a ghostly apparition in the room, in a white bell-bottom suit, singing Blue Moon. He said it never felt quite right, dancing in the spotlight like I did. I was just a little kid,
is based off my life. I'm one of 5 kids.
Okay. Whereabouts are you in the mix?
Second youngest. I have a little brother, and then everybody's older than me. But I have a little brother he was obsessed with Elvis as a kid, like completely. He was a really obsessive kid, so he would go through phases. But he went through this Elvis phase where he had to wear this like silk Elvis cape to school, and he had posters in his room, and he named his lizard Elvis, and he was just completely obsessed with Elvis for some reason. And it was just like kind of took over the house. And I don't know where, I think that song came just, I also did this process I learned about called automatic writing, where you just basically like open a journal and just try to get out of your head and just see what you write.
Right.
And that song came about that way. And I liked that the line that came before everything was who were you before the world made you this way? In the Elvis song, the chorus says, who were you before the world made you this way?
Yep.
And I think that's kind of the quintessence of Elvis, is that he's just a projection of everybody else's idea of him. And there are a million impersonators, and he's just,
that's true.
this concept, but who is actually that person was so deeply troubled.
Yep.
And he had this whole thing with his brother. So I kind of was trying to parallel that of like, siblings and kind of even Elvis is like, it's a song about the persona, I guess.
Right. Yep. Do you have a favorite Elvis tune?
Well, Blue Moon is such a weird song.
Yep. That's true.
There's like something about it's so deeply eerie.
It's very haunting. The way he sings it.
Very haunting. So probably that one. I Can't Help Falling in Love with You. Did he sing that originally? Yeah.
I believe so, yes.
Or that one's really good.
Yeah, very good. Excellent. Yeah. All right.
I don't know. I wasn't like the biggest fan of the movie, honestly.
No, I wasn't either.
Really
but it seemed to take liberties with the truth, but I guess that's what films do.
Yeah. And it was so like overstimulating visually, but anyway.
Yeah, it was worth a watch, but that's about it.
But he obviously never gets old. It's just like it's like the impersonation of him is more important than the person itself, I think, at this point.
That's interesting. Yeah. So now that the record is out, what are you doing? Are you doing shows? Are you thinking about the next one? Are you?
Well,
resting?
mostly I'm in this. Mostly I'm in this in between space, getting to be situated in Italy. But I am really wanting to play. It's just that it's a matter of figuring it out in the right way, and my life situation makes that a little complicated.
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
And I'm, I released the album through AWOL, but I'm not on a label. So there's just things that
keep you. Yeah.
But I would like to have that experience eventually.
So do you like being in the in-between space? Is it a choice that you've made?
So. Well, I think we're always there. Everybody's always kind of in the in-between, whether you realize it or not. But I think that I am a little addicted to that space. And sometimes I need to push myself into like more of a clear territory, because I think as a musician or any artist can get attached to like trying to go to the threshold and see what's there, so to speak. They kind of go into territories where other people don't want to go, to look what's there and then bring something back.
Right.
And that can certainly be an addictive process. Like you just want to do it again and again. And it's like masochistic almost with an album, because you think like, oh, I'm never going to do this again, or at least that's how I feel.
Right.
And then it's done, and then I automatically start thinking about the next one, or how that's all going to be, or I'm going to go back and do a much more straightforward country pop album, or I'm going to do something totally experimental next time. Yeah. So.
And what are you listening to? Do you listen to much current music?
I have been more in London, strangely, because I really was just listening to like classical music and a lot of, just podcasts and different like books on, that was more what I was doing for so long. But I found that being in the city, I really enjoy that musical sidewalk experience. So, but nothing too specifically. I've sort of allowed the algorithm to take over my mind and just tell me what to listen to. But I really enjoy that. It gives me another appreciation for music to just be listening, walking around the city.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully when you're in your travels, you can find your way down to this part of the world sometime. It'd be kind of cool.
I know. I feel it's coming because yeah, I just like have that feeling. So I wonder if I'm farther away now than I was
in New
I
York
don't know.
or in yeah, somewhere northeast.
Yeah, well, I was on the
I think
East
it is
Coast. I was in
further.
Cape Cod last time I talked. Is
Yeah,
it farther? Yeah.
I think so. It's quite a distance. I've flown both from New Zealand to London and New Zealand to New York. Like they're all it's mind-boggling. It's like 17 hours of
It's far. Yeah.
a
Is there a
week.
good stopover spot?
It depends how you get there. I think when I went to London, I went through like stopped in Germany, I think, but that and up through maybe Thailand or I don't know, somewhere in there. It went down around that way. Whereas if you go to there is a direct flight to New York from Auckland that they just installed very recently. But before you would go to like Hawaii or LA and then New York. So that way around. Either way, it's very tiring.
I'll see. I'll cross that bridge when I get there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Work your way down bit by bit, I say. Take it easy. Anyway, thank you very much for talking to me. I really appreciate seeing you again and hearing the new record.
Yeah. Thanks so much for talking to me again. Yeah. And I hope one day I'll be in New Zealand. So.
And now I'm going to use some of that information to see if I can remember my dreams better. No moving.
Yeah, well, just try to stay in, like, just let yourself linger and tell yourself the dream in your head, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like, because you just have these crazy images in your head, but say like, okay, it was my mom and she was doing, whatever, try to say it to yourself and then.
Yep. And now I have the Cranberries in my head linger, so I'm going to go listen to that.
Oh, yeah. Listen to that. Yeah, I was thinking about them the other day. Okay. All right.
Very good. Have a great day, and thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.